The more genuine and honest you are about the person you are, I think not only is it easier to make friends and be liked and respected, but it's also, it makes it easier to make art too. I mean, but like focus on the things that that make your art special, that make your taste special, you know?
Hey guys, in this episode, I'm joined by Ryan Pallett. He's a 2D character concept artist who's made a niche for himself doing 2D character art. In this episode, we talk about how he found his place in the art industry and our thoughts on making art a sustainable career. Thanks for watching, and I really hope you enjoy the episode.
All going. So the way I usually start these things, the point of this is not to talk about how to become an artist, how to get good, or you know, like how to make money or get a job or any of that kind of stuff. It's more about the why of doing art in the first place, you know? And I think a lot of art education focuses on like a side of art that's like ignoring, like, how do you manage to do this for 40 or 50 years without getting burnt out?
True.
You know? And how do you manage to develop your own voice as an artist in spite of, like, you know, having to manage to earn money and, you know, pay rent and like have a girlfriend and like live a life and all
the super important, the important stuff.
Right. And I feel like there are two sides of being a person online. It's like, or there are two sides of being a person. There's like the like part that is shown publicly on Instagram and all that kind of stuff. And then there's the behind the scenes stuff of, like, you know, like, how does somebody manage to, you know, do all this stuff? And when I look at, like, you're sketching all the time, you know, you're doing a lot of personal work, you know?
Yeah. Trying to.
Yeah. Oh.
No, it's funny. I had a friend who actually I hadn't chatted with in a few months, and he messaged me, or we talked on Discord, and he was like, oh man, you look like you've been having such a great time, like, just from looking at your posts and everything. I'm like, oh, I didn't even think it gave off that impression. Like, I've just been, been like busy and kind of frantic and a little, you know, anxious and everything. He's like, dang, I wouldn't have gotten that from from your Instagram. It's like
from the amount of work that people do.
Yeah, it's like perception. I mean, seeing people's Instagrams and stuff is definitely like
it's
can alter perception. Yeah. You're like, how's this person doing all of this all the time and like still making work and, you know, getting a job and everything. It's like, it's crazy.
Well, I think people look at that crazy output of being like an Instagram artist or YouTuber or something, and they're like, oh man, I have to do that too, you know? Yeah. It's like, unless I'm doing that, unless I'm like trying to get followers and posting all that, then it's like a waste of time, you know? And
yeah, I could totally see that. I mean, it's kind of one of the avenues that people are trying to make money, and like, I mean, but only so many people actually do, like, from that, right? I think what I've always felt is as long as the artists that you, if you start getting to a point where the artists that you like are following you, like, doesn't matter how many of them there are, you know, like then you're good, you know, because then your peers are looking at your stuff and they respect you, or they enjoy your work. Or
well, I feel like where I personally get in trouble, and where I think also a lot of people get in trouble, is they you know, start pushing like the goalposts for what success is further and further, which I think is just like inevitable as a human. You know, like, you start doing more and more, and then you see somebody performing better than you, and then that being like Instagram being a very like easy way of like, oh, that person has more followers, they have more likes, as an easy value judgment of your worth, you know?
Yeah. And not taking into account the amount of work. I mean, they've probably been in the same position as you before, you know, like they've felt that way too, looking at other people. So it's because it's always in the moment. Like, you see something, you're like, oh man, I need to rethink the way I'm do lazy, art now.
I'm not doing enough, and I'm not good enough. And stuff.
No, I've definitely. I mean, I've just opened Instagram or like Twitter and looked at some art, and I'm like, I should really change everything I do about how I draw. Like, 100%. Like, this is terrible. Even after having a good art day or a good drawing day, you know, it's funny.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's like that's the downside of social media. I think is that it's one of those things that. It can drive you forward to be better, because you get to see what everyone else is doing. But I don't think the human brain is necessarily built for that. You know, like, no, from like a more evolutionary perspective, like we were, like, for most of humanity, no one had social media. The only people that you knew were like local to you physically, you know?
Yeah.
But now we have access to potentially tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people
Yeah, it's so abstracted too. Like it's so abstracted from those like base instincts, right? Because it's like you get worried from looking at someone's like creativity that they're sharing with, you know, or like, or you get worried about not enough people seeing your, like, because you're so worried about making money and finding success and all that, and it like totally muddies the water of creativity, you know. And I think I mean, it's hard to say because it's like a lot of people can't be in a position where they can be stubborn and be creative, you know, and like still survive. So it's like, but as much as stubborn as you can be in, you know, like to your creativity and like, and you can keep pushing and making, you know, making stuff that you want to make. And still surviving, like that's the way to go forward, I feel like.
100%. Well, I think that's the only metric of success really is like, do you like it? You know, do you enjoy it?
Yeah, if you're making stuff you like, that's the most important thing, I would say.
Well, and I was talking to a friend about this who was working comics for a long time, and he said, you know, it's difficult to be a professional artist because you're constantly working to be chosen, you know? It's like just by the nature of like having to perform for other people, you're having to give up somewhat of what you'd be doing if you didn't have any external motivation in order to be chosen by a studio or, you know, some art director or something.
I mean, you're definitely forced to push yourself, you know, you're forced to, which can be good and bad. I think if you're working with people who are better than you, it's good kind of push because you see the caliber of what, you know, they're capable of. And you're like, I want to be able to do that. You know, I want to be able to do that as well as they do. But then on the bad side, it's like, there's all this pressure to always be like outputting, you know, and it's not just work, like even outside of work, there's this pressure to like be putting out art and stuff. So it's like, you can get burnt out super, super easily if you're not careful. It's hard to like change the lens, you know, to look at it a different way and be like, well, I have to do this because I need to survive versus like, I'm doing this because I want to be better. Cause both can be true at the same time, but like your frame of mind is so important and like will burn you out if you're, you know, if you're always worried about like, I need to make something to post. I need to make something to like, but it's, I think in small doses, it can be good. I've definitely felt it like,
Well, I mean, I also think that like the like negative sides of being an artist, like the external motivation, the money, all that stuff isn't necessarily a bad extrinsic thing. And I find a lot of my, like, I'm not perfectly motivated 100% of the time. And sometimes having that external pressure is the thing that gets me to be better. You know? And I think like with anything, it's always about the balance of it, you know? Like to do things because you want to be recognized or you want to be rich or you want to have, you know, people like what you do. I think that's a totally human thing to do. And to like, for me to like completely brush that off as like like an evil part about being an artist or human, I think is a little bit like it like simplifies the problem a little bit too much to me.
Hey guys, before moving on, I wanted to talk about the mentorships I'm starting. If you ever wanted to learn how to draw, where to go in your career, or general advice on being creative, I'm going to be opening up 10 mentorship sessions per month. What's included is a 1-hour call per month, direct access to me over Discord, and written critiques and draw-overs. Being an artist is really difficult, and having a mentor can save you a lot of time and headache trying to figure out things on your own. Personally, I've spent a lot of time learning from other people through mentorships or classes, and it's been invaluable to my career and my life. Having someone to bounce ideas off of and ask where to go can save you years of trial and error. I'm going to be charging $150 a month, but if you decide it's not exactly what you're looking for, no big deal. I'll give you a full refund. A lot of this stuff is figuring out what works best for you and the kind of teaching style that you prefer. So if you are interested, head to my Patreon, which is linked below. And thanks, and back to the video.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm actually, I mean, thinking about it now, I wouldn't even say that the problem is necessarily that money is to be made off of art. I think it's that if you have a passion that you can't pursue financially, it's difficult to pursue that passion a lot of the time for a lot of people, you know, it's like the other way from it, you know, because it's like as artists, you know, if we're passionate enough, and we are willing to sacrifice enough of ourselves to do it, we can like make money off of it. But like, there are so many people who love doing art that just do it for fun, you know, and like, maybe can't even pursue, like maybe they have similar ambitions to make their art great and be recognized, but not financially, you know, but it's hard to put that much time into something that you're not financially invested in.
Yeah. Well, do you feel like you could have gotten to where you're at skill wise if you didn't have the financial motivation to go and do it?
It's hard to say, you know. I mean, I think I definitely went the route that I went was not so clear cut and like I'm going to be making money. Like it was more just like I want to make art that I like and hopefully people will acknowledge it, you know,
and like it.
And that doesn't work, you know, for most people. But I don't know. It's definitely a big factor, you know. I mean, it's taken and it's given, you know, like it makes you push yourself harder, but it also makes you afraid to do certain things, I would say. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Again, I think it's everyone I know who's been like a creative professional struggled with this concept of like struggling with the motivation of trying to earn enough money to survive while also pursuing the thing that they really love doing, you know? And I think it is true that a lot of people want to be in a position where they can take care of themselves, like not even like thrive, but just like survive just off, you know, doing art or playing music or dancing or singing or something. And, you know, I guess part of the reason I do this podcast in general is like trying to talk about like, why do some people make it in one and why do some don't, you know? And I don't know if it's like random chance. I don't know if it's like, some people just work harder than others. I doubt it's that, but you know, there's some like overarching complicated thing that, you know, precedes all this stuff.
I feel like it's definitely a combination. It's like luck and, you know, I mean, cause like 10 people could work hard, but 3 people get lucky, you know, and they make a connection. And like, I mean, cause I definitely wouldn't, I mean, even just for me personally, I wouldn't say that I did anything by skill, you know. I mean, I knew people. I have friends who are professionals, and I live in like Pasadena, LA area, which is where everyone is. It's like, you know, there's definitely that aspect of it too. But even then, it's like chance too, you know. Well, people have to resonate with the work to some degree.
I think so too. Well, but I also think that there's a measure of like putting yourself in the situations where the stuff can even happen. You know, it's like going to an art school. Or like even putting yourself in an art class could be an act of bravery because you're like risking being like the worst person in the room. You're risking being like embarrassed because of whatever reason. And that initial first step of like, I'm going to take a chance on being in this art class. Even if it, like, if you're in high school, if you're a high schooler taking a chance at taking a class at like Brainstorm or Concept Design Academy, that's actually what I would say one of the best things you can do if you want to be like a professional artist.
Totally. Right? I mean, I think it puts you in an environment where people are actively pursuing that goal. You get to see like a lot of not only like skill wise, but like just ambition wise, the level that people are at. And like, you can use that to gauge it for yourself, you know? Cause I mean, even before I went to, I mean, I had even gone to CDA for like a year, but even it wasn't until I like started meeting artists and actually talking to artists did I realize like how out of my depth I was for trying to pursue the thing that we were all pursuing, you know. It's like you don't understand how to do it exactly, but there are so many people who can who have knowledge who you can just ask and they'll help you, you know. And it's hard to put that ego aside, like and be like, I'm a student, I want to learn, like I just want to absorb all the information. I'm not gonna like put my ego into it and like think that I know better than anything. It's and people respond to that too. Like people
100%. Yeah, well they respond to enthusiasm as well, you know. Like if you go in and you're willing and happy to be the worst person in the room, like to me that's actually a lot more inspiring than the guy that goes in and is the best person in the room that is talking down to everyone and stuff.
And I mean, dude, I mean for most of the classes I've been in, all the people who are like really, really good are like already professionals basically. Like that's the other thing. It's like you could go into a class and have like 2 people who are already working, 2 people who are like getting out of art center, or like, you know, there are people who are experienced, you know, and paired, like the class could have people who are completely new to drawing too. So it's like, you gotta be okay with that too.
Well, I feel like there is like a deeply spiritual element to this, where it's like, you know, I think the things that make someone good in an art career are the same things that make someone good as a person. You know, a lot, like in a sense. I mean, it's more complicated, but like the person that's willing to go and like learn how to humble themselves and put aside their ego and learn from someone is that's just like a good life skill to have in general.
For sure.
You know, people are going to appreciate you more. People are going to like you more. And I think overall that's going to lead to just a more like fulfilling life than.
Yeah. And you're going to be surrounded by people who know who you are genuinely. And the more genuine and honest you are about the person you are, I think not only is it easier to make friends and be liked and respected, but it's also, it makes it easier to make art too. I mean, if you're being genuine, you're not like, oh, how can I make, you know, unless you like, I mean, how can I make the next, like, you know, Overwatch skin, you know, if that's like the only thing that you're thinking about with your style, you know, like, and you're not thinking about, well, what kind of art do I like? What kind of, I mean, if you like Overwatch art, obviously that's a different thing. And that's, if that's what you want to do, that's, you know,
totally fine. But
but like focus on the things that you, that make your art special, that make your taste special, you know? So it's like,
well, and I feel like that's part of the negative side of the art education too, to me, is that a lot of it is aspirational. A lot of it is like looking at this person and being like, oh, this is like the pinnacle of art. You know, this is, you know, like this is the way art is supposed to be. And then that becoming like almost like a dogmatic, like there's no other way of saying things other than being like a photo bash concept artist or being like a character designer at Riot or Blizzard or something, you know?
And I think that goes back to like the success part of it, you know, like the financial success. I think people see like prestigious jobs and like well-paying jobs at like prestigious companies, and they think that that's like what it means to be an artist, you know? At least like when they're looking at it from like an aspirational point of view. I think when you're in it, you're more like, how can I survive and and still draw and have fun all the time? Like, how can I make a living off of having fun drawing, you know? It's tough, you know? I mean, that's definitely that part of it. Yeah. The financial aspect plays into it for sure.
Well, I was talking to a friend about this, and he was saying that the real job of being like a creative person in any industry, whether it's movies or games or TV or whatever, is not the actual doing of the job. Because I think that like from one sense, like character design or directing a movie or any of that stuff is like pretty simple. Like it's
straightforward, you know?
You could learn it in a couple of years, right? If you really study. But the hard part is like choosing something that you're willing to do, you know, that like you're willing to like choose instead of like sitting in your underpants and playing video games and eating Oreos and being like, I'm gonna drive an hour to work to go and like do this thing
for sure.
You know?
And it's not, I think, I just had a good thought about like passions, you know, like, and making something into a passion, like, or expanding your mind on a passion. Like, if you're willing to do that stuff, you have to, sometimes you're not just going to be willing to do things like, even if you love art, if you love drawing, like you might not, it's like, are you drawing all the time? Like probably not, you know? But if you can find ways to like incorporate more time into doing that thing, like you'll know whether or not you really are passionate about it, you know?
100%.
Because it's like, if you can do it and like, if you can make yourself do it and like have fun for hours and hours and like make it a thing that you do while you're like resting, then it makes it easier to, you know, to like give yourself to this thing more.
Absolutely. I think it goes back to the being honest to yourself and like, in a sense, getting rid of your ego. Because I think that if you're able to let go of the overarching, like reaching towards being the person instead of giving attention to what you really care about, you're able to choose like, you know, a question I ask everybody is, would you be doing the same exact thing you're doing right now if you had $1 billion? Which is essentially the question. Like, if you had no external motivations, like you had all the money in the world, if you have $1 billion, you're essentially the richest, most famous person in your immediate social circle. Probably, right?
I would assume for most.
So, right? I guess. But it's like, then you like, do you still paint? Do you still draw? And for a lot of people, the answer might be no, or a lot less, or something. You know?
And even then, that's like, it shouldn't necessarily be a marker for like, I mean, it's not a marker for like, well, should you be doing art? You know, it's like, it's more of a marker for like, I guess it's, yeah, but I know what you mean. It's like, just, do you love doing this thing? Like, is there like other aspects to it other than financial that, I mean, for art, I would say probably most definitely, because art is not, you know, you're not in the money,
not lucrative,
not the money making business with art for the most part, you know?
Yeah.
Not that some artists don't make bank, but like,
well, I mean, it's way easier to make money doing other stuff too.
Yeah.
Like I have, you know, friends in cybersecurity making an ungodly amount of money.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, that's the average salary there. You know?
Yeah, you could do IT, be an electrician.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
There are so many things that you can do to make money, I think.
Yeah, well, and I think it always comes back to, like, you know, the why of doing things. Because from a more like existential sort of depressing point of view, I think everyone's life has some semblance of suffering in it. Like, you can't.
Oh yeah,
escape,
life is there's always going to be suffering.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think it's about how you, like, the importance that the moments that you can bring about, you know, during that suffering that are important, and like how you can not mitigate the suffering, but like find ways to make it more not so jagged, you know, it's make it a little smoother.
I think it's like like life is suffering, but it doesn't have to be. I can't remember. It was like some like anecdotal fortune cookie quote, but it was like, life is suffering, but it doesn't have to be painful.
Yeah.
Something, you know, it's like a thing that I talk about a lot is like, you know, you could have more enjoyment running a marathon than you could eating Oreos on the couch, you know, which I think is like an important thing to pay attention to in somebody's life. Is like, you could be suffering physically, but like mentally you're on top of the world. Whereas like you could have the most, like, the sugariest, best things in front of you, and you could be like, this is the worst. This is hell, essentially, you know? And I think that a lot of art is like trying to get to a point to where you're like you're suffering because it sucks to draw sometimes. But you're like, oh, this is awesome. You know, this is totally worth the struggle of it, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It takes a while, you know. I think it takes a bit of time to get to that point where you're not just hating your drawings all the time, or like or like getting just little splashes of like, ooh, that's a nice head, you know. But it does, I think once you get to a certain point, obviously there's things that you're really like, that you get more ambitious about, but then your baseline definitely isn't just like, I'm still shit at drawing, or I'm still bad at drawing. You know, your baseline is, well, I can, you know, you got to give yourself some credit. You can't
I can do. I
hear artists all the time who are like, oh, I hate my work, I hate my drawings. It's like, well, is there anything you like about it? Like, do you like anything you do, man? Like, you got to have some, you got to enjoy it somehow, you know, like,
Well, I think it comes back to like having self-love, you know, like actually, you know, looking at yourself and looking at the mistakes you made and looking at your errors and all that kind of stuff, and be like, oh, I'm fine with that. That's cool.
Yeah. Everybody screws up, you know, so you can't expect to be perfect. You can't, and it's not about the mistakes you make. It's about how you know, like recover from those mistakes, and like how your mindset is after, you know, making those mistakes. And
well, I feel like there's a little bit of like an archetypal thing going on as well, where it's like I think every artist starts out by looking at their idol. I mean, like whether it's some comic guy or some 3D model or some person working at Riot, and they're like, oh, they're the best artist of all time. They're the best artist ever, and then they aspire to do that, and they either don't get there or they do. And if they do get there, they're like, oh, it's not what it's cracked out to be. Or if they don't, they're like resentful that they didn't get in. But then if they're lucky, they're able to kill that ideal a little bit, and they see it. It's like, oh, that person, they're just a human being, you know?
Yeah.
They're suffering, they're not suffering, they're doing great art, they're not doing great art. They have a lot of bad days, they have good days. And I think the second you're able to like see, like essentially like kill your idols, like kill your father, sort of stuff, you're able to like let go of those ideals and be able to like forgive yourself for your mistakes a little bit more, you know?
Yeah, it can be. I feel like the way I'm thinking about it is like you're on a peak, you know, looking at a different peak, and you're seeing you're like, oh, that looks so great, you know, and then you like travel down into the mire, you know, and sometimes like people get stuck in the mire, people make it to the peak and they seek out another peak. Yeah. But it's like the thing that matters is the traveling, is the ascension, journey, the everything, you know. It's like, and being able to appreciate that, I mean, it's hard, you know. I mean,
did you get that from Sam Harris by chance?
No, I just, that just makes sense. Like, you know, cause if you're still like, if you're like on the peak looking over there, you're still like looking at it and you want it. But if you're down in there, if you're down in the mire, you're like looking up at it and you're resentful and angry and you like,
well, and it's like, there's the local peak of being like, you know, at, in your, like being the best person in your high school. You know? And then you have to look at the far off peak of being a Riot concept artist. And you have to go through the, you have to go from one peak to another.
For sure. I was lucky that at my school, there were a few pretty good artists. So I was, I never had any confidence.
No delusions.
No delusions. No.
Yeah.
Thankfully. I mean, everybody develops some delusions, I'm sure, but
I'm completely delusional.
Yeah. Well, about other things, I'm definitely delusional too. But it's fun to be, it's good being humbled, you know? That.
Absolutely. Well, I feel like that's actually part of the human experience, is experiencing those moments of like, oh man, like, oh, I sucked, you know, or being a little bit ashamed of yourself and stuff. And
being able to have some kind, I mean, like it's like a very minor ego death, you know, you're like, oh, I'm not the, you know, hot shit that I thought I was. I'm actually just like some dude.
Well, I think from like again, another spiritual perspective is like the ideals of like the Buddha or like Jesus Christ or Muhammad or something. It's like, I think the reality of that as a human is like, you realize you can never hit that ideal, and you just try your best to be the best you can. And then don't beat yourself up when you can't quite get there, you know? And I think a lot of people, like a lot of where people's suffering comes from is the wanting of to be the ideal, wanting to be the hot shot, you know?
It's just the striving for more, you know, that like hunger for more. It's good, and it can be bad because it, you know, it kind of warps your perspective of success, and it like makes you not appreciative for the things that you have, you know. You have to be able to be humble and want at the same time, you know. I mean, you can't just be one thing. Like humans are we're so complex, like you'll just mess yourself up.
Well, I guess from a like there is that, but also there's like the people that want to be like the Michael Jordan of whatever they're doing, right? The like savant level, like super obsessive to just a crazy level. And like I don't know how I feel about that exactly, because you know, you hear stories about like Steve Jobs yelling at his employees, or like whatever musician.
I mean, even Michael Jordan was a terrible person. Like, like just like horrible gambling addiction, and like just he was kind of an asshole. You know, I mean, these people they're not, you know, they're obsessed with their thing, but they're also a person, you know, and like for everything, for all the skill points that they've that's been put into this one thing that they're really good at, like it's been taken out of other things.
100%.
So and also I don't think you can be that. I think you are that. Like, and I don't think a lot of people are that, you know, like you can't like be like, oh, I want to be, I mean, it sounds very like I'm a dude on a podcast to say, but like you can't like, if you were the guy that you think you wanted to be, you'd be like doing that thing right now. And you wouldn't be thinking about it. But for some things it is kind of true. Like you can't become,
you are that or you're not.
Like you're either on the way there already, or you're like, looking at that peak and you're like, oh yeah, that looks nice.
Yeah.
Well, and like there are things you can do to like get close to that, you know, like, but I think there is definitely like a 1 in a million kind of thing also where, you know, you have to be that guy to
hyper obsessive,
you have to be like a little, like you don't just become Alex Honnold, the climber, you know, like that dude has a death wish. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
like
right.
you can't just be that guy. You can't, like, I couldn't just go over there one day and be like, well, I'm going to be fine with falling to my death, you know, every time.
Well, but I feel like, you know, he had some key, like his father dying and stuff, and some key things that happened that, like,
Oh, totally.
you know, like gave him like a perspective on death that like we just don't have.
Oh yeah. No, but that's the crazy thing too, is like, it's about him being that guy, and it's about all the circumstances that have made him into that guy. Like,
right.
being two separate things that mold him into that person that he is, you know?
Right.
Like, cause like, even, yeah, if you had a guy who, like, you can have I think if, like, when I say you can be that, like, you have to already be that guy, you have to have, like, some people have the potential in them to be great, you know, and to like do the thing that but everything has to align too, you know, because it's like, what if you had, you know, I mean, you could have a passion for like the craziest thing, but like it wouldn't, like, you know, you're like built like a linebacker, but you have like in your mind, you're like, I want to be the best ballet dancer in the world, you know, and it's like unfortunately those two things, like, you can't, it would be hard for you. It would be like an uphill battle to become that person, 100%, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like things you got to have, there's definitely RNG.
yeah, for sure. Well, and I feel like, I mean, culturally we, like it's hard not to admire those people that are hyper obsessive. Like we talk about like Michael Jordan, Alex Honnold, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, or any of those people as like, you know, like there's a tinge of resentment towards them because they're so obsessive, but then there's like a little bit of admiration of like, oh man, Alex Honnold is a fucking badass, you know?
Yeah,
I mean, I don't think he's on the same level of like Steve Jobs in terms of being like a horrible person by any means, but.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's not like a businessman or anything. Like, he's just some guy who climbs. Yeah, right. He just holds on to rocks really well.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but I feel like on the other side of that, there is a tinge of that like stubbornness where like you can't, like if you chose tomorrow to be an accountant because it is a better job to have financially, I think it'd be almost impossible for either of us to do that because I just don't value that, you know?
Yeah. And it goes the same way. It's like, I'm not passionate about that. Like, I don't know if I could sit down for X amount of hours and do that thing, you know? Yeah. Right. And like, I mean, it sounds kind of shitty, but like, I'm sure some people are passionate about accounting, you know. There are definitely 100%. People who are passionate about numbers and like love math and you know, maybe don't love accounting because it's not like the coolest math job, but like I'm sure they're like, yeah, it's not so bad, I don't mind. But yeah, even then it's like, I mean, I think we got to take into account the luck that we have like doing what we do, doing art, and like that it's such a creatively fulfilling thing as well as can be financially successful or, you know, it could be, you can make money off of it. So
something that pays the bills.
I mean, people do admire the success stories, you know, I mean, but there's also so many people that like, it's hard to quantify success, you know, and like, I mean, Van Gogh is a great example, you know, like as an artist, no success at all in his lifetime, you know, like only suffering, only pain. Right. And his art is like some of the best, you know, some prolific, of the most widely regarded art, you know. It's like,
of all time. Yeah.
And like, I think, but people are also drawn, I think it's like, but it's a combination, you know, people are drawn to his pain, I think as well, you know, like.
Well, and I feel like from a more meta perspective, like his paintings, if I saw them in a thrift shop, I'd be like, oh, that's a painting, you know, I think. Yeah,
and no, I know what you mean.
But then the context of his life, I think, adds a level to the art that is like, I think that actually is the art to me.
You know? For sure. It's the entirety of it. It's not just the painting. It's no, I could totally see that. Yeah. I don't know if I don't know if it was a meme or if I just made it up in my head, but like going from like as you like slide from back in the day to modern day, you know, I feel like it was like the painting was bigger, and then the little tagline was smaller, and then like as time shifts, those two things change, you know. But it's like that's not a bad thing either. It's like I think it's all contextual. Yeah.
Well, I mean, when I travel, like, I don't think it's that hard to find a masterpiece, or at least an amazing piece of artwork. Like whether you go on ArtStation, you
Totally
just see a new page of art you never.
I probably
seen before,
I probably see something I would think is a masterpiece like every day, pretty much.
Well, and
like wow.
Well, and I think it's like the images themselves they're becoming common, the skills and all that stuff, especially with AI coming out. It's like this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like images are getting cheap, but the context behind it is the thing that makes it more valuable.
Yeah. And I mean, it's the sensibility of the person behind the painting, you know, and like, I mean, I think the thing that I look at mostly now is like, I'm not like, oh, wow, like this person can realistically depict blah, you know, like I'm more like, wow, their sensibility for shape is very interesting. Their choice of rendering is really interesting. The way that they like graphically design their pages is really interesting.
Right.
I mean, I've been really enjoying a lot of like comic artists, you know, like their work. And also, I mean, even in that instance, like as far as respect goes, there's definitely like contextual elements. Like I'm like, wow, to think all the amount of work that they've put into doing all this, like paneling and compositing and like, and being able to draw like a nice character, well-drawn character design on top of that. It's like
amazing.
It's impressive.
Yeah. Well, and it's one of the lower paid art jobs as well. So it has to be a labor of love and passion and stuff. And
for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think moving forward too, it's like, to me, the thing that, like, if somebody wants to make money as an artist, the thing no longer is like selling images on their own. I think it's like having a little bit of a story behind it, whether it's like the image itself is like a piece of fan art, so there's more relatability there, or there's like an experience tied along with it, or they just really like the artists themselves.
Yeah. I mean, the context could even just be that, you know, the artists themselves and like the people who admire the taste of the artist, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, like I see, it'd be cool. I've done it before, like, but you know, like adoptables where they'll like make a design and then they'll sell it, like almost like a commission, but they made it just for themselves and then like they'll auction it off.
No, I haven't.
Oh, well, yeah. So that's a thing people do. I've seen that a lot on Twitter. But like people will design like a character or something. They'll make an OC and then they'll like sell it to people, you know, and people buy them. I mean, I've sold a couple designs just that people like, you know, even if it's like for a personal character or something like that. Yeah. But I don't know if you could. I mean, you could make money like that, I guess. I'm sure there's. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I talk about this a lot, but the idea of being a concept artist seems like a new thing. Like, not new in the past, like 50 years. No, it hasn't been around for that long, realistically, you know? Like,
it's in some form, I think it's existed, but not to the degree where the finish is being passed along. Yeah. You know? Because, like, I mean, like Leyendecker, you know, I'm sure he concepted his pieces before he made them, you know, but he was also the illustrator for the post, you know, so it was like, you know, I mean, and like, I mean, I'd say as long as like movies or ads have been around, there's probably been some form of concept art.
Yeah. Well, I guess in its current state of almost like celebrity concept artists, you know.
That's true. But we're also like in that realm, you know, so like I think other people don't you're like, oh, it's James Gurney. It's like nobody's like, people are like, who's that old guy? Like, who are all these people around him? It's true though. Like we do. I mean, I think maybe that's just a condition of like people in general now, but like the idolization of people in their. No, I think people have always. People have always held their you know, the people in their field to a high regard when they respect them. I think just the access to those people maybe has changed. Yeah. And the level to which you can be like obsessed with somebody's work and everything has increased too.
Oh yeah. You can become a fan of Leyendecker instead of Saturday Evening Post covers and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and you can read all about his life and you can find all everything that he's ever done, you know. It's like it's pretty cool. I mean, it's cool for the dead artists, I guess.
Yeah, well, and I guess again, I think it's like it's part of the reason. Like I talk to a lot of people who are like deeply afraid of AI taking their jobs, and I don't know much about the art industry in terms of being like a studio artist right now, but
Yeah.
it feels like concept art might have a pretty big impact on, like AI might have a pretty big impact on studio art.
It feels like it could, because it's like, if you're thinking about, I mean, I have friends who have talked about, you know, like departments that have like discussed using AI, not like necessarily done it at like big studios, but like, I definitely think like for like smaller freelance stuff, you know, it's like, like I saw a video game that like a first person game, and I saw all these posters in the game, and they all looked like AI generated. So I was like, oh, that's like, you know, 2 artists that they probably didn't have to hire to like,
do all these things.
Or the artist themselves was the one who did it, you know, to like save on time and money and stuff like that. I think and it goes back to like the financialization of everything. It's like, you know, businesses are going to do what they can to minimize the cost, you know, on the back end.
Yeah.
And if that means that they can, you know, use the work that's been, you know, I mean, effectively stolen from other artists without their permission, like they probably will, you know,
100%,
like why wouldn't they? Right. And, I mean, but that's not to say that they wouldn't have artists to like interpret what they see or something like that. Yeah. But even then it's like, it kind of sucks. Like, but there are, I'm sure, like, even for like, maybe not for like TV, you know, like for TV animation, like you probably wouldn't want to do that stuff. But like, my worry is that it'll get to a point where like basically the equivalent of like how like there aren't a lot of like big budget original IPs being produced right now in terms of like film and TV and stuff like that. And people are just doing remakes. Like it'll just become this like sterilization of the industry, and it'll become like circular, and like there won't be any new input into it because it'll be like a closed loop of like information, you know, and like, and they won't be able to like develop new shapes, new ideas, new, you know, that's my worry.
Well, what I think is going to happen is once the legality of Midjourney and all this stuff, like once it's legal to use and safe to use, a lot of these big companies would start using it to the degree that they're like able to, you know? And then I think at a certain point, like you're absolutely right. Like the people are going to start using AI. All the tools are going to seem the same. Then suddenly like everything starts to be similar. And I think there is like a parallel there in terms of just like Marvel movies, all like there's a style there. They're all kind of homogenous.
Yeah, very homogenous.
And then they like the industry as a whole has copied that whole formula for making movies because it's like the formula's figured out. I'm sure it's like relatively cheap or relatively profitable. And every movie's like that. But I think another thing will happen where all these artists won't have jobs anymore, but potentially the AI might enable people to make projects in a way that they haven't been able to make before, you know, or do something different. That's like, you couldn't even predict what it's going to be.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, I think the real issue with AI isn't that it exists necessarily. I think the issue is more so that people know that it will be abused, you know, and like that artists will be taken advantage of, like, cause it's not like bad. Like, I don't think that it's bad to have like revolutionary technology, you know, that can be, if it's a tool, it's a tool. But if it's like, if it's, you know, going for like replacing people, then obviously that's a different story. Yeah. So it's tough. I mean, I don't know. I think that it's funny because I've seen people talk about like, oh, like AI democratizes art or whatever, but it's like, bro, pick up a pencil. Like you can do it. Like it might take a little work, but you can do exactly what you're doing with training. Like that's what makes it art. That's what makes it, I don't know. Like meaningful, I think there is, it makes it meaningful. It makes it, that's what makes it special to you. Like you're not gonna like people, once you like, if you activate like the cheat codes in a video game, like you're not gonna play the video game for you know, as long as you would if you were just playing it normally, you know, like you're going to get bored and you're going to stop. And and no one's going to care, you know. It's like,
yeah. Well, again, I think it goes back to the context of it. Like when you remove the context of an image just being an image, then it just becomes that. It's just a collection of pixels and whatever to just like sell a product. You know?
Yeah, seriously. I mean, it's like, I mean, yeah, it's kind of already, that part sucks. It's like, that's like people, like now instead of looking at an image and being like, wow, like, I can't believe somebody made this. You have to be like, you have to look at it and be like, is that like, and you don't like have to, but you kind of, I mean, I want to, you know, I want to, I mean, you can tell when an image isn't like, isn't there. Yeah. Isn't like real, you know, or like,
right.
So it's,
I mean, I'm getting to a point where it's like, it seems like I'm seeing things all the time. That's like, this is, they're not saying it's AI, but this looks like AI, you know?
Yeah, just, for sure.
You know, and I know some people have gotten flack for making art that looks AI, that isn't AI, but then, you know.
Yeah. And that's so weird. It's like, that just, I saw one, there was this crazy one. It was like a dude who would make an AI image and then like put it onto a canvas in a photo that he was in his like studio.
Yeah.
Make it look like he was doing like an oil painting.
Yeah.
And then he took the same image, like put like a graphite filter on it, cropped it, and then put it in a sketchbook as well. And I was like, dude, what are you I was like, and it's so like, it's got such distinct shapes. Like you can tell,
right.
You're like, this isn't, like, come on, buddy. Like, right. And then like 2 days later, after people, you know, call them out extensively, their account's just gone because it's like, you know, people just trying to like piggyback on success of like seeming like a skilled artist, you know, or like that part is annoying, like the disingenuous. I mean, but there's always going to be fakers. There's always going to be, you know, people trying to create the facade, you know, instead of like being genuine, like we talked about, you know, and people realize it for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I see all these things on TikTok popping up nowadays. It's like AR prompt engineers, you know, they're calling themselves prompt engineers now. And they're, you know, people are calling them out for being AI artists or doing AI, but they're like, you try it, you know, it's a lot harder than it looks, you know, and people are like, oh, can I buy your prompt off you? And it's like, what a strange world that we're like moving into, you know?
Yeah. And people, it's so funny. It's like, you try doing this. It's like, okay, give me an image of your, like, give me your list of prompts. I'll copy and paste it into the, into the prompter. You know, it's like, you pick up a brush and do what that guy's doing over there. It's like,
I guess it's like the crappy part about all this stuff is just the massive loss of identity for a lot of people that I know, and like people that I admire too. And it's like, looking at, I know that, like, I think it was like Wayne Barlow or something.
Ooh. Somebody
was shitting on him because they were like he's one of the most AI prompted people out there, I think. And people are like, oh, you should just learn how to be better, you know, to Wayne Barlow, like the prolific concept art guy. And it's like, oh my God, that's so tragic, you know?
Yeah. And it's like, yes, it's like the people, I mean, obviously these aren't the people that you want to be like listening to, but they, I mean, they're like, they kind of, what's the word? They like minimize what art is, you know, or like the effort that goes into art. It's like they reduce it just to, product, making an image, like just an image. It's just, that's all it is. There's no
super shallow and stuff.
Yeah.
Do you mind giving me 1 minute? Sorry.
Yeah, no.
My laptop is about to die, which is recording the audio. And
be able to live off my art and go places. Like one of my ultimate dreams is just to travel around the world and sketch in different places. Not even sketch the places, just be in the place and sketch. Like sketch the same shit I'll be sketching at my desk, you know?
Yeah. But like you're in the Arctic or something.
Yeah. But but I'm seeing the world, you know, and I'm meeting people and making, you know, new memories and experiences and sharing art with people and, you know, being around artists. I mean, I think, I think if you're an artist, you have to find a community of people who are like-minded, you know, like
100%.
It redefines it like recontextualizes art, you know, and like gives it more meaning too.
Absolutely. I think it gives it way more meaning. And to me, that's like the reason to do art at all. Like it starts out as you're like, oh, I want to be the person that everyone looks up to. And then it turns into like, oh, I just want to be part of this community. You know, you just want to be like around, just like hang out and have fun, and you know.
Yeah, for me, it's like the first thing I think about is, do I like this? And then, or like I want to be able to look at my drawings, you know, and be like, that's good, you know?
Right.
And then the second thing is like, I want to be able to show the people I know and have them be like, oh yeah, that's pretty sick. That's nice. Yeah. It's like, oh yeah, I like that. And then they show me their thing and I'm like, oh yeah, that's nice. I like that. And it's like, that's the joy of it, you know?
Yeah. Which fundamentally is a pretty simple thing. It's like a very human, just like, I'll show you yours, you show me mine.
Yeah, you're just like, look, it's just show and tell.
Yeah, right. Like, there's probably been a similar interaction at like Caveman Times with like cool rocks. Or
totally.
You know,
even drawings too. I'd imagine.
Yeah, right.
I mean, imagine the guy in the, you know, the Lascaux caves or whatever, the little like, you know, the horses and stuff. That he's probably like, yo, check this out. He's like, that's I just saw one of those.
Oh hell yeah,
like,
dude.
Yo, that's what it looks like.
Oh shit, dude.
And then they're like, I mean, just the joy that art, you know, it's like
100%.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's all of this in spite of, you know, in the face of like
cancer and a world war and famine
and horror and like
AI.
And like, just fucking capitalism and like getting stuck at a job and wage slavery and all, every famine. Yeah. Like everything you said, like climate change. It's like, we're all getting wrecked. Like the world is melting, but we're still like, we're still doing our doodles, you know, like we're not going to save the world. But we're going to, you know, but we can make people happier. We can make people more inspired. You know, we can, you know, we have things to offer. Yeah. It's not like, it's not like we're just doing nothing, you know?
Yeah. Right. Well, and I think, again, to me, going back to the beginning of the conversations, that's the hardest part about being an artist, is justifying scribbling graphite on a piece of paper when, you know, all this horrible stuff is happening.
Yeah. You gotta be a little selfish. You gotta be like, well, I want to do it. Yeah. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Which again, I think is an act of bravery. And
For sure.
You know, there is a little bit of that, like Michael Jordan, Steve Jobs, like, fuck it, I'm going to do what I want.
Yeah. You have to. Yeah. You really have to. And like, some people have the ability to, and I mean, even people who don't have the ability to, they'll still be drawing. They'll find a way. Like if they're, you know, I mean, obviously it does suck. 'Cause it's like, I feel like there are people who could be, you know, who have the potential to be that level of artists, but like, because of just how life is, you know, they haven't like been able to realize that potential, you know, or like they're not going to be able to realize that potential. And that sucks too. You know, it's like to not even be able to start on a journey that, you know, you would want to, that, you know, you could do well in, you know? Yeah. It sucks. I mean, just sucks.
I'm just curious. Do you have any advice for anyone that might be listening to this, that they like, they're like in school or they're an artist and they're like looking to kind of like make money off their art and like essentially just like do what we've been talking about? Yeah.
I would say, I think I'd say there's a couple things. I'd say one of the more important things is you need to be able to, you got to be able to enjoy just drawing and like having fun with it and being able to get sucked into the worlds that you make and make it like a thing that you can do as meditation, you know, like drawing can't just be work. It can't just be, like if you really want to like become like really skilled and like you have to put a lot of time in, obviously, but like, and a way to do that is just by like making it a thing you do when you're relaxing, you know, like I don't play a lot of video games, you know, because I would prefer to draw. Like anytime I pick up a game, sometimes I'm like, oh, but I could be describing this world that I've been building, you know, and like, or I could be making some cool new character that I think is awesome, that I think would be cool if I saw it in a show, or, you know, like you have to like being able to give yourself time to like, and it's like, it's fun. 'Cause it's not tiring, you know. Like if you're just sitting there and able to enjoy the drawing and the process of drawing, it's like meditative and like it'll replenish you, you know.
Right.
So there's that. And then the second thing I would say is you have to be stubborn about what you like and be honest with yourself about the things that you are like the things that interest you, you know, artistically. Like, I think you shouldn't, like, it took me a while to realize the things that I was actually into. Like, and I didn't realize it until I started to look back at my childhood and think about the things that I enjoyed watching as a kid or the things I enjoyed playing as a kid, you know, and like think about how cool that stuff was and the joy that it would bring me. And like thinking about that and then, you know, going back to present day and being like, how can I incorporate that? I mean, it's like Ian McCaig, you know, he's like, you got to have that like childlike wonder, you know, about your art. And a way to do that is by focusing on the things that you like and drawing things that you would enjoy, you know, not drawing things that other people would enjoy. And I know a lot of students like get caught up doing like studies and stuff, but you got to draw from imagination. You got to draw, like, you got to just be able to invent and create and like, and it's how you incorporate all your knowledge into your imagination. That's what makes your style. And that's what makes that's where your skill is, you know, like that's how you learn to translate those skills from student to professional, you know? So it's like, yeah, you got to focus on what you like. You have to be drawing from imagination and you have to be able to draw as like a pastime. Like it needs to be something that you can do when you relax.
Yeah. Something that doesn't stress you out.
Yeah.
And again, I think when you're striving to be the best, you're striving to be like the best studier in the room. It's hard for it to be that thing that you're choosing to do over playing video games.
Yeah.
You know?
But it gets easier, you know, you got to train it. And it's like I said before about like, you can't just be the passionate, like super hyper passionate just from the get-go, you know. It takes time to build that, you know. You have to contextualize the passion and like contextualize your love for the thing that you're doing, you know. And like the deeper of an understanding you have about your own love for something, the more love that you can give it and the more effort you can put into it and the more conscious you can be about what you do with it, you know.
Right.
I was going to say something too about like I mean even when I like for drawing just for fun, I mean I'll draw, like people will see this, like if you were looking outside looking in at an artist, you know, just seeing them sit at a desk for, you know, 15 hours a day or 12 hours a day, however long, like you'd think, okay, well they hate themselves, right? To some degree, like they must hate themselves. Otherwise they wouldn't be doing that. And it's like, no, you know, like, I mean, I like to draw. I mean, I work for, you know, like 6 to 8 hours, like on work stuff. And then after that, I'll keep drawing for another, you know, like 6 hours. Cause it's like, that's like when I get to relax. That's how I relax is by, and it's like, and there's something you can do a bit, like, it's nice cause you can like do little tricks, you know, like it's a way to make yourself feel good. Cause you're like, oh, I'm still being productive. Like, you know, I'm doodling, but I'm still, like, I'm still putting to use all of my knowledge, like all the fundamentals that I've learned. I'm, you know, and then, hey, if you gotta like coax yourself into these things. Like I couldn't, like when I was starting my Instagram, I couldn't be like, okay, I gotta post every day. I gotta do this. Like I couldn't think about it that way. I had to be like
baby steps, right?
I had to be like, I want to draw to relax and I'm just going to draw the things that I want to draw. And I'm going to draw a bunch of stuff. I'm going to get into a headspace and like just have fun with it. And then I'll like come back out of it and I'll be like, okay, so I'm going to post this day. I'm going to post this day. You know, like I'm going to space it out so that I can have more time to like relax and chill.
Right. Well, you have to compartmentalize both sides. You have to be able to be like focus purely on the art while you're doing the art. And then you're able to remove yourself and objectively look at it and be like, this is something that can grow my following or my business or something, but while you're creating the art.
Yeah, you don't want to dip that into it because then you won't get anything done and you won't make good, genuine stuff.
Oh yeah, and people 100% be able to see that it's not being genuine. You know?
Yeah,
like,
and it makes it so much harder to make it too.
Yeah.
Like you have to. I think that's another good piece of advice is like finding ways to coax yourself into doing things.
Yeah, right.
Like, because it's you can't be like, I'm gonna make a post.
Right.
I'm gonna make a post on Instagram that is gonna get X amount of likes. Like it just happens. Like it's not.
Well,
and there's things you can do to like to support that and like and like get to that point, but you can't like you can't be thinking about that stuff while you're making it. You know.
Well, I think from some perspective that there's like a tyrant relationship there where it's like if I'm like forcing yourself to do 8 hours of drawing a day from the start it's like essentially being like a slave to yourself or something, you know?
Totally. Yeah.
And like an analogy that I use, if like somebody wants to become a runner and they're asking, like somebody's asking a professional runner the advice to become a professional runner, the advice is never like, oh, go run 10 miles a day.
Yeah. Just run. Yeah.
It's like run for, or like walk around your block, you know, just do what you're willing to do and then just build up slowly from there.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, even with drawing, you know, you can't draw like 12 hours every day. Yeah. And also just from a artistic standpoint, like you need input, you know, you need things to absorb. Yeah. So it's like, it's like the same with like a runner, you know, like he's going to tell you to do like good knee stretches, good ankle stretches, like watch movies, watch TV shows, watch anime, you know, read manga, read comic books, read art books, you know, like just look at art in general. Yeah. You know, find things that inspire you and like, and not people that inspire you necessarily, but like more importantly, just like pieces of art that inspire you, that speak to you. And it's a balancing act for sure. Cause you don't want to get burnt out.
Oh yeah.
Like you also have to build up to that, like 8 hours of work and then 6 hours of drawing for fun, you know, like you can't just be doing that off the get go. Like you have to, you got to build up to it.
Well, I think in one sense you have to earn it too, you know, like
for sure.
I didn't like going to museums until I started studying art. And I feel like me being, if you're drawing classes and doing studies and doing all that stuff was the thing that actually enabled me to enjoy going and seeing like a surgeon or something.
Yeah. Cause then you have things that you are excited to see. Yeah. There's context there. It's not just, you're not just looking at paintings. You're like, there are like paintings that you know, that you've seen, that you've maybe even studied, you know, it's like, oh, it's the best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, we've been going for about an hour and 15 minutes.
Nice.
You want to call it there and do a sketchbook tour?
Yeah, that sounds great. That's awesome, man. Thanks. Yeah, thanks for chatting. Thanks for having me.
For sure, man. Cool. I'll cut it there.
Awesome.